Emmy let Tyler on a wild goose chase around the island. He chased her from point to point, surprised at how quick she was. All the while, he kept a metaphorical eye on Anwen. If anything happened to her, thanks to their shared soul, he'd know in an instant. He doubted anything would happen on the sacred island, now that the other dragons were awake. But one couldn't be too careful.
Come on!
Emmy urged as she darted through the trees.
Catch me!
She twirled, making her dress flare out before jumping up and down in a playful manner. Heaving a sigh, Tyler chased after her once more. She had the stamina of a baby dragon, he decided. Well, there was more than one way to catch a child. Using his draconic abilities, he transformed into a squirrel and dashed after her. Emmy giggled as she continued to run on the stick-thin legs of a healthy, active child.
Yay!
She scaled a tree with practiced ease, watching for Tyler below. Tyler ran up after her, circling the trunk in a spiral pattern as she moved. With a lightning-quick leap, he pounced on Emmy's back, returning to his mortal form the moment he made contact. As he changed, his arms encircled the little girl. His back pressed against the trunk to keep from tossing them both to the ground.
No fair!
Emmy complained as she realized she was pinned in a bear hug.
No fair, no fair, no fair! I'll tell Mommy!
She turned a full-on pout his direction before suddenly perking up as Tyler let go.
Mama's done,
she announced. Tyler gave a quick cursory glance around the area. He still couldn't sense anyone but Anwen on the island. The others had left hours ago.
Who is your mama?
He asked as he returned his attention to the girl.
And where is she?
Emmy cocked her head to one side like a bird.
Can't tell you,
she teased with an impish grin. The next moment, a small finch fluttered up into the air and flew off, leaving Tyler alone in the tree. Anwen met Tyler at their camp. Figuring Tyler might have gone back without her, she'd carried the branch from the grove down to the old site. Except he wasn't there when she arrived, so she'd sat to wait. She didn't have to wait long.
Took you long enough,
she teased as he entered the clearing.
Where'd you go?
Tyler shrugged.
Thought I saw something, but it turned out to be nothing.
He watched as the teen pouted, hands on her hips. It reminded him of Margot. So alike, yet so different.
Let's go,
he said, breaking the silence.
I'm sure the others are wondering what happened to us.
With a bit of a sigh, Anwen took his offered hand as he led her back to the shore.
Couldn't they have at least left us a boat?
She cried out in exasperation when they reached the jetty. Not even a piece of flotsam greeted them. Tyler held back a smile as he watched her rant. He knew she wasn't much of a swimmer. Not that he'd ask any mortal to swim the vast distance to shore. Especially not now with the other dragons awake.
I could always transform and fly you across,
he offered. Anwen bit her lip. It was no secret she didn't care for heights. In fact, to say she didn't care for them would be an understatement. Something that seemed to amuse her companion to no end. She shuddered at the thought. The last time she'd flown with him was more of a snatch and grab. It had occurred after she'd fallen off the mountain into the endless chasm. That was something she didn't want to repeat ever in life. Even flying with Kern was not something she was willing to do again.
I take that as a no,
Tyler hazarded.
Well, then there's only one other way.
He took her hand, drawing her away from the jetty and more towards the beach.
Use the ability you were born with. Practice your skills.
Anwen rolled her eyes.
What skills? I can barely manage a light orb. What makes you think I can make a raft?
Tyler's mouth pricked up into a genuine smile.
Who said you had to make a boat? There are other ways to manipulate matter. Let me show you.
Leading her to the water's edge, he stopped above the eddy, standing right behind her. Taking her hands into his, he laced his fingers between hers. Their arms touched down their entire length. His chest pressed against her back as she moved to look over her shoulder.
Look with your dragon sight,
he whispered in her ear.
Remember what you saw. Everything is made of matter. All matter can be manipulated. It can change form. Liquids to solids, for example. Despite
his suggestion, Anwen couldn't force the sight to work. Instead, she felt the energy shift around her as Tyler asked the water in front of them to change. A chunk of ice formed, large enough for the two of them to stand on. She felt Tyler squeeze her hand.
You try,
he said in her mind as he led her to step onto the ice.
Ask the water to carry us across.
Anwen tried to look at the molecules with her enhanced vision. Her so-called sight was far from reliable, but with his help she could almost see what he meant. The water seemed more than happy to do as she asked. With a bit of a stutter, the ice began to move forward, carrying them with it.
Whoa.
Anwen almost lost her balance as the ice moved away from the shore, but Tyler's mental reassurance helped steady her. The two slid across the water on their makeshift craft, surfing without a board. Anwen felt more than a bit uncomfortable as the elements did as she asked. Wind whipped at their bodies as they were propelled forward as though on a jet ski or hoverboard. Anwen raised her arms for balance. Tyler's arms rose with them as they moved, fingers still intertwined. It almost felt like flying, only less scary. She couldn't fall to her death, though she could still drown. Again. It was over too soon. The chunk of ice melted with a rapid squelch of energy as they stepped onto the short pier. That pier led to what once was a fishing village. It was the same one they'd visited the first time Tyler had taken her to the island.
I knew you could do it,
Tyler encouraged as he released her from his hold. Anwen tried to untangle her hair as the breeze continued around them. The branch she'd cut poked into her ribs, and she had to readjust its position.
Not that I wanted to do it again anytime soon.
She breathed. She stared at the water where the ice had disappeared.
You helped me.
She added.
You showed me what to do, and I heard you in my mind.
She turned to face him, the corners of her lips turned down.
It was almost like how I used to hear Karlie before he woke up. Why did I hear you in my mind?
The wind curved around the small dock they stood on, pushing the two closer together. It seemed as though the wind wanted them to embrace. The tall grasses climbing up the slope to the main road whispered to each other, gossiping about the dragon and mage. Strictly speaking, they were a taboo, but neither seemed to care. Tyler smiled.
We share a soul, remember?
He pushed a strand of auburn hair from her face, settling it back behind her ear.
As to why you could hear Kern without sharing a soul, is he not the father of all dragons? Did not the dragon mages come from his line? That, and he is kind of the most powerful dragon in history. Why wouldn't he be able to talk to you using soul speech?
Whatever spell the moment had cast was broken as Anwen snorted.
You're talking like a dragon lord again.
She admonished as she grabbed his hand. Not bothering to ask for permission, she pulled him towards the mountainside path.
I am a dragon lord?
Tyler retorted as he followed. He smiled as the once timid and shy girl led the charge up the incline. It wasn't that she was outgoing now, but that she had found a quiet kind of motivation that only served to make her more endearing. They'd both been through a lot. Unfortunately, he knew they would have to endure much more. Anwen chose to ignore his comment as she pressed on. If she didn't look back, she didn't have to see how high up they'd come. And if she didn't see that, she wouldn't get dizzy. It wouldn't do to charge up like someone who knew what they were doing only to succumb to a case of vertigo at the drop of a hat. Tyler let out a bemused sigh.
Honestly,
He spoke up, breaking the silence.
any dragon can use soul speech with another, but sharing a soul does help. However, most dragons can't or won't use it with mortals. It tends to cause discomfort for most of them. Hearing someone else in their mind, that is.
The Kato rolled her eyes. Even though he couldn't see, it was just like him to temper things a bit, though it made sense. Callum had spoken to her the same way, now that she thought about it. Perhaps it was easier for the both of them. Part of her wondered just how many dragons could speak that way to their mage counterparts, and just chose not to.
But we have more pressing things.
Tyler reminded. Anwen's thoughts veered to those things, such as regaining the main road and heading up the mountain path. She wasn't exactly looking forward to that trek. She supposed she could always make it quicker by agreeing to fly. At least they'd quickly bypass the endless chasm, which would be just as daunting. She was tempted, but thought better of it. The last time she'd flown hadn't ended well.